Hey guys, my name is Billy Vandermark, and today I'm going to be presenting on the death penalty in collegiate sports as it relates to our chapter, which we just read in terms of ethical decision making of sports managers. There's not a bigger sports manager that I can think of than Mark Emmert, who's the president of the NCAA, and kind of handle these types of situations with collegiate sports and certain athletic programs that are deemed unethical due to some of their actions or scandals that happen on their campuses. A couple examples that you might think of right off the bat is the Michigan State one right up the road in East Lansing. Penn State, the Jerry Sandusky scandal that happened a few years ago, and there's many more. And every single time that one of these scandals happens or infractions happen, you hear the word death penalty thrown around. So not only but the key thing to think about is not only does it affect the student athletes of that program, it affects everyone at that school, which is something I'm going to get into more here as we go on. Just some more examples of the death penalty. There's only been really 3 major cases where the NCAA came in and shut down the program for a year. The University of Kentucky basketball had a point shaving scandal incident with their basketball team, and not only did it shut down the basketball team for one season, it shut down the entire athletic department. The University of Louisiana Lafayette was also a basketball infraction where they're receiving improper benefits from the coaches and boosters. And the most popular one when it comes to the death penalty in collegiate sports is Southern Methodist University. Their football program was receiving improper benefits and many recruiting violations that they kind of ignored over a course of a decade in the 80s. And I talked about this in the intro. Places that could have or could receive the death penalty here in the future. Michigan State football. Obviously, they had a large sexual abuse scandal go on. Penn State football with the Jerry Sandusky scandal. And then Louisville basketball most recently, and kind of more importantly, in terms of recruiting, there was a lot of improper benefits being thrown around, a lot of assistant coaches getting fired for multiple different infractions. And then another one that's not listed here that could be talked about is Baylor football. About 2 or 3 years ago, they had a major sexual assault problem on their campus that definitely not only got their coach fired, but there was a culture around that campus that felt that Baylor athletics was definitely in trouble with the NCAA. So my position is that when it comes to the death penalty, the NCAA should not enforce the death penalty. I kind of see it almost as unethical because of the amount of money that a university could lose. And we can kind of go through my points here. The first one being it's not fair to the university. It's unfair punishment. There's contractual agreements that will be broken when it comes to the death penalty, and the effects on others outside of the guilty party is a huge issue that I feel is unfair and unethical when it comes to the NCAA imposing the death penalty. Now, going back and kind of recapping all of this, the death penalty to a university is program specific. So when a football team has major infractions, or a basketball team or a baseball team has major infractions, you need to be a repeat offender. So that means multiple cases over multiple years after probation, all this type of stuff. And when the NCAA comes in and they say, hey, you guys are on probation and you guys continue, and the school continues to have violations, that's when the NCAA can come in and enforce the death penalty, which the death penalty is 1 year, no competition, no TV, basically disband the program for one single competition season. And we go back to one of our main examples is Southern Methodist University. went from being one of the powerhouses in college football, and when they received the death penalty, they basically have not been back to winning more than 6 games a year, when they were traditionally winning 10, 12, 13 games in a season. So going back to my points, the first one is not fair to the university. They're pointing the blame on the program, when usually it should be, the blame should be pointed at a certain individual. You look at the University of Louisville right now, a lot of their issues stem from their head coach, Rick Pitino, who was fired due to multiple scandals. But when you look at this, it's not fair to the university to punish a program or the university. All right, many universities depend on revenue generation. Obviously, being the top sellers here would be football and men's basketball, because they're going to drive attendance, they're going to drive merchandise sales, they're going to drive season tickets. All that type of stuff plays into this. And not only are you punishing, athletics of the university, you're punishing the student body as well. There's been numbers of a lot of research done on, teams that go far in their conference tournament or win their conference or go to the national stage and do well in March Madness and all that type of stuff, where their attendance the next year and their enrollment goes up because of their popularity, because they were on the national stage. And I think that hurts the university in the long run. I think that definitely that, you see my last point here, that you should hold individuals responsible, not programs and universities responsible for one or two people's actions, when in the larger scale, in the bigger picture, it's going to be a bigger effect on the entire university, not just the program that's at fault. When it comes to college sports, now there's a multi-million, almost billion-dollar business, and there's financial agreements that are in place. So if there was a team to receive the death penalty, what happens to all those agreements? So you talk about a conference. So you go to the ACC, you go to the Big Ten, and one of those teams gets the death penalty. What happens to the rest of the conference? They suffer, because the conference is a revenue-sharing business. So any bowl game, any TV money, anything like that, it all goes to the conference and then dispersed out evenly amongst the teams in the conference. So one team goes out, they lose money. That's not fair to those teams that have followed the rules, have paid attention to certain details, where they're not getting themselves in situations in terms of recruiting or improper benefits or anything like that. TV affiliations is another one. The SEC, ESPN, ACC, ESPN, the CBS is involved, ABC is involved. But they have affiliations to the Big Ten games, and those games that get blocked out because of the death penalty, you're gonna, not only you're gonna lose viewership, but you're gonna lose TV money that a lot of these schools and conferences depend on. And then you talk about future and guaranteed games in terms of agreements. You give the team a death penalty on a year where you give Alabama the death penalty. All right, let's say for a year, for example, and they have to play. They have to play Alabama State, who's an FCS program. And this is a guaranteed game where they're planning on making a lot of money. But they can't play the game because Alabama has a death penalty. That hurts that school as well, and I don't think that's the right thing to do. And then obviously it's going to have an effect on other individuals outside of the guilty party. You think about staff members on staff at one of these institutions. You think about athletic trainers. You think about the academic support that rely on football, basketball, any type of these teams. To provide an income for their family. Assistant coaches, usually there's one or two offenders in the group, but never the entire staff. And I don't know if the entire staff should be punished or have wrongful terminations because of this. And you see lawsuits happen all the time. There's multiple lawsuits at Penn State. over wrongful terminations. And there's been deals where these coaches get put on the stand and they sue because they did nothing wrong and then they were fired, which I feel is very, very unfair. In conclusion, just to restate my position, is that the NCAA should not be able to, not only be able to, but they shouldn't impose the death penalty on schools and programs. To reiterate, it's not fair against the university. It's an unfair punishment. There's contractual agreements, and then the effect on others outside of the guilty party, assistant coaches, athletic trainers, academic support, all these type of people that put their lives on, not their livelihoods on the line for these programs, and to have them taken away for a year is definitely a big issue. So to open up discussion for the rest of the class, my first question is, instead of the death penalty, are there other ways to effectively punish unethical people, programs at the NCAA level? Just what are some ideas, guys? I mean, is there more specific ways to not completely give a team a death penalty, but get close to that? And then my second question: do people make unethical decisions, or do programs and universities? And that kind of goes back to my original statement saying we shouldn't harm universities or programs. We should punish university or programs, but you should punish individuals for their actions, for their decisions. Appreciate you guys taking the time and listening to my debate. Let me know what you guys think.